Hi guys, it's Kirsty. I wanted to talk a little bit about self-compassion and how incredibly helpful it can be to practice it in your OCD recovery. It goes a long way to helping you practice acceptance as well. I know for me, it was a big challenge to practice self-compassion. It was not something I was particularly used to, but it's something that really helped me with the different points in my recovery. And now I'm feeling a lot better in myself. I still find it helps me to deal with other situations, non-OCD related situations. So self-compassion is actually quite widely covered in the OCD community. There's a lot of literature about it in OCD and anxiety books, and it's actually talked about massively in the wider mental health community, and not just in books. It's discussed on websites, on YouTube, on podcasts, and massively covered on social media, and there's a very good reason for it. I do think sometimes a big factor that fuels mental health difficulties and negative emotions is that lack of self-compassion. It's that tendency to be very hard on yourself because you're not meeting the expectations that you have for yourself or that you think that others have for you. When you're in the darkest days of struggling with OCD or other mental health difficulties, it's actually such a challenge to be able to cope with the demands of day-to-day life. And then you can find yourself looking around and comparing yourself to your friends and family and becoming more and more frustrated with yourself because your functioning is kind of temporarily impaired. So you can beat yourself up even more then when you're comparing yourself to other people because they make everything look so easy from the outside. So you can find yourself being, oh, why can't I do that the way so-and-so does? Why do I have to be like this? But really, why can't you be like that? You're suffering, you're struggling, surely you deserve to have some kindness, to show yourself some kindness. So I just want to give some tips about how I practice self-compassion because it's not easy if you're not used to it. But firstly, I thought I'd explain a little bit more about self-compassion because it's not the same as self-pity and it's not the same as, for example, complacency. So you're not saying that, okay, these are my flaws and I'm struggling and I'm not going to do anything about it. You're acknowledging that you're struggling, you're having some difficulties. You're accepting yourself as a fallible human being because as a human being, you're not going to be perfect. You are going to mess up sometimes and you're still going to try your best to move forward in your, whether it's mental health recovery and make positive changes in your life if that's what you want to do. But I think that self-compassion really does help with the whole process of acceptance. They are different to each other. So acceptance being less of a doing and more of a not doing, and allowing, a non-struggling. Whereas I think that self-compassion is actually more of an act that you can practice, whether that's in the way you treat yourself or the way you speak to yourself internally or the way you speak about yourself. One of the things I did struggle with when I was trying to practice more self-compassion was the fact that I couldn't feel compassion for myself, which kind of is one of my difficulties overall, because one of my biggest compulsions was mental checking of sort of feelings and emotions, etc. So I felt like I was failing at self-compassion because I couldn't feel compassionate towards myself. But even when it's like that, you don't need to feel compassion. If you just act with compassion towards yourself, that is still enough. That's enough to be helping you. So for example, the way you speak about yourself, speaking about yourself in a more kinder way, or at least in a more neutral way, is one way that you can help. Another thing is looking after yourself. doing the things that you need to do to feel well. So, you know, trying to eat well, sleep well, exercising, taking care of your appearance, you know, looking after your hair, your teeth, etc. Even little small things like that can be incredibly difficult when you're in the darkest days of mental health difficulties. But also another thing is the ruminating about how rubbish you are, for example. After many years of not showing yourself compassion, your mind is going to have habits of saying negative things about you. And if those thoughts pop up, you're not failing at self-compassion. It's just the same as intrusive thoughts. They come up, we have the option to do something about them or to not do something about them. So, for example, if when I'm doing this video, I have a few thoughts that pop up, that sounded a bit stupid or something, I might be tempted to think about it afterwards, but I'm going to show myself compassion and not think about it afterwards, because if I did happen to say something a little bit stupid, that's okay. People say stupid things sometimes, but it's choosing to not jump all over that negative thought about yourself and think, why am I like this, and really get involved in it. You can just leave that thought there. All right, there I go. I'm saying nasty things about myself again in my mind. Move on. I actually started to apply principles that, so some people might have read a lot about labelling thoughts and things, and which is a way of responding to intrusive thoughts in some ways, although there's a lot more to it needed than just that. But I did start to try and label my negative thoughts about myself and lack of self-compassion as, there I go, I'm Kirsty bashing again. I'm not going to join in with that. I'll let my brain, chat away in the background. I don't have to participate. So that really helped. And don't get me wrong, my brain still throws out plenty of trash talk about me, but I try where I can just not to join in with it. It's the same as we try not to join in with the mental ruminations if we're struggling with the mental compulsions in OCD. When it's automatic, we have to leave it there and let it run its course a little bit, because the brain has gotten used to these habits. It's the same with talking trash about ourselves and our brains. We don't have to join in, we can let it play out. But if we continue to act in a way that's compassionate towards ourselves, we are over time showing our brain that that's the new way of being, and that's the new way that we're going to treat ourselves. Because of the nature of OCD being harsh, critical, cruel, it is by nature completely incompassionate. So many people who have been suffering with OCD for years may still be at the point where they don't even believe that they deserve to show themselves self-compassion. They almost feel like they can't bring themselves to show themselves self-compassion. But part of the reading list in OCD recovery that Rob covers is The Myth of Self-Esteem by Albert Ellis. And in this book, Albert Ellis talks about how nobody, not one person, is either 100% good or 100% bad. We're human beings that are made up of many different traits, and we all may take part in behaviours that are really good and bad. We're allowed to make mistakes. No human being is worthless or less valuable than any other human being. But somebody who is at a point in their recovery where they still don't believe that they even deserve to show themselves self-compassion, maybe it would help to view it in a way that even if you don't think that you're valuable right now, what about friends and family who value you? Can you just show yourself some self-compassion for their sake for now? Is that something maybe you could do? Just start with small acts each day with looking after yourself, and just practicing trying to speak to yourself a bit more kindly, showing yourself a bit of kindness, acknowledging that you're suffering and working towards your recovery. the act of doing exposures is an act of self-compassion, because when you're doing exposures and the thoughts and feelings feel very, very real, you almost feel like an exposure is almost like taking a risk. Showing yourself self-compassion helps you feel like it's worth taking that risk. You're getting behind yourself. You are the only you in this world, you know, and obviously it depends what you believe, and you know, whether you believe that there's other life after death. But in this moment in this world, why not get behind yourself? You're the only you that you've got. This is the only body that you've got. This is the only brain that you've got. What have you got to lose? Take that risk, do your exposures, work through recovery, and look after yourself.
Those are just some tips to help practice a bit more self-compassion. And once you can learn a bit more self-compassion for you, it helps extend to other people as well. So you find yourself finding it a bit easier to kind of think in a more compassionate way towards others, and that helps you be more accepting of them. So helps for their behaviour to perhaps not wind you up as much. But I hope those tips can help you, and I really do recommend practicing more self-compassion. It really does help. Thank you for listening.